Hey everybody, it's Mr. Skelton, and I hope you're having a good summer. It's July 6th, I believe, and so this is my first video in the series I promised you to help you in your note reading. To do that, first, I had a couple ideas I wanted to incorporate in this. One is I wanted to make sure this, at least where possible, I could give you exercises to do over the course of a week. And second, that they didn't necessarily, or they didn't necessitate, having an instrument. If you have an instrument, that's great, but you will probably find some of these, at least in the beginning, are almost better without it. And there are a couple bits of information that we're going to go over first. The first is the difference between half steps and whole steps. And that's really, really important to know. A half step is like the smallest distance between two notes on the instrument, and the closest that they can become and still be part of our Western tonal music tradition. A whole step is two half steps. So sometimes when we have certain finger patterns, we're going to skip a finger or skip a position of a finger simply to accommodate a whole step rather than a half step. And there are other kinds of intervals between notes too, but these are the most common. The first thing we need to sort of set as a ground rule, and it's kind of arbitrary, is we're only going to be dealing in natural notes. So we're talking about things that are A, B, C, D, E, F, G. No F sharps, no B flats. It means that violins and violas, you will have some low fingerings where that is a natural note. So just to refresh your memory, natural and regular are not the same thing. You can have regular coffee that is not all natural. Okay, so well, you're maybe too young for that. So be prepared that I'll be using the natural system. It's not necessarily the finger patterns that you are the most familiar with. And what I want to show you first is something that can kind of help you see what is available to you. It's all of the sort of the colors that you have available on your instrument, if thinking artistically here. Here, for example, is a violin fingering chart showing all of the half steps available in first position. I'll talk about the specific differences between the instruments a little bit later. For right now, I'm just going to point out a few things in common. The first is that all stringed instruments have a half step between open strings and low first fingers. So what you've learned as the regular first finger is actually a whole step above the open string. Second, each of the half steps is fairly evenly spaced. However, since we very rarely play only in half steps, music is usually a mix of whole steps and half steps, we learn different patterns for grouping our fingers. Third, there are only two places where half steps occur between natural notes. One place is between B and C, and the other is between E and F. Since we're going to be working with naturals, it will benefit you to remember that. A very useful tool for practicing fingerings without an instrument is your arm. We're going to imagine that this is your fingerboard. It's not a complete substitute for having an instrument, but at least you'll always have it with you. And for this stage, I'd rather have you working without an instrument. And since we're using our left hand for fingering, it's best to use your right arm as your fingerboard. Imagine that you have 4 strings on your arm. They are evenly spaced, with the highest sounding one on the far right and the lowest sounding one on the far left. Now, this is a mental exercise, so we don't need to be exact about placement. We just want to keep track of where each string is mentally, from low to high and high to low. If you feel the need to be precise, you are certainly free to draw lines on your arm if you think it will help you. And if you're really committed, go get a tattoo.